It was a really fun game against a strong opponent playing a deck that perhaps isn't as strong as some of his others, but he's a fun person to play against. He's playing 5-color control with Horde of Notions. I think it's control. I'm playing 5-color control with Slivers. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize the commanders and we'll see how this plays out. First of all, real quick, here's my hand, and although the hand is completely awesome if I draw the right artifacts or a source of black, if I don't have anything going on, and it's quite possible that a couple of turns will pass before I do. Even if I were to draw like blue mana or something, I couldn't do anything with it. So for me, I didn't feel like this hand was a keeper. This hand, on the other hand, is excellent. It may not look like it, but basically, if I find a land, either by drawing it or with Brainstorm, land in the Grim into Staff is a wonderful early play, and I have Impulse to back me up. So I top deck Enlightened Tutor, and at this point I figured if he had like a Strip Mine, then I would Enlightened Tutor for Mana Crypt, and then Crypt down a Monolith, and then hope I drew another land, and then get down Staff and use that to recover. I also thought about, since he had no Strip, just going and getting land tax, but then I realized no matter what I did, I could, the best play here was Brainstorm, and then that gives me the option, like when I put the 2 card, if none of these were a land, and what I could do is during my upkeep I could still go get Crypt and play Grim Monolith and be able to play Staff on the next turn, and I can shuffle away the non-land cards. But as it turns out, it's great stuff. So what I decided to put back was Impulse in a land. I'm going to draw the land, I'm going to lose the Impulse, but I have a game plan for everything here, and I think Merchant Scroll is stronger than Impulse, strangely. So I go ahead and just get down with Grim and say go. I'm going to speed through this a bit. He ingots, and I go with the Staff plan. So if Staff lives, I'm going to be in excellent shape. Unfortunately, Staff doesn't live, so I shoot him. And unusual to find somebody playing Bat Charm. I think it's an excellent card. I mean, we've been running it for a while here, Brian and I, but it's interesting to see it in other decks. So anyway, I decided not to use an Enlightened Tutor because I have that Transmute. And here's actually one of the things I love about Transmute. It makes cards like Grim Monolith, Mana Crypt, and Vault much stronger. So I transmute the Grim into Crucible, and that lets me play a land immediately. And I go ahead and pay some life to play an untapped Hallowed Fountain so that I can Enlighten at the end of his turn. I was thinking I might get Shackles potentially at some point, and the more islands I have, the better, so I didn't want to miss a turn, you know, playing a non-island Blains there and not taking damage. So he gets down Chandra the Firebrand. The final ability is not so great, +1's not so great. The -2, the ability to clone spells, is solid, provided you have something to go with it. So I go get Future Sight. And thanks to the power of Crucible, I have no problems casting it. And the top card of my deck is going to be underneath Sight. It's a Delta, so if he kills the Sight now, I won't even get to play it. But I'm holding that Will in my hand. I don't know what's going on with this. Okay, that's frustrating. There we go. So I'm holding that Will in my hand, and that's the ultimate game plan anyway. And the longer I can keep him like reactively attacking my stuff and not developing much, the better, since I'm holding the Will. But he doesn't have removal, he just goes with Smash to the Face, 6 damage, Horde, and Chandra. Alright, so Sylvan shows up, and I decide to keep the Delta in my hand in case he kills Future Sight, and keep using lands from the graveyard. I shuffled the Sylvan away because Sylvan's just redundant. Between Sight and Crucible, I've got plenty of card drawing. Unfortunately, I don't shuffle it into any business, so I Merchant Scroll. And now there's a business spell on top, and that's a good time to get rid of this guy. If it had kept that impulse, I might have had some trouble this game. So anyway, the opponent, unfortunately for me, I thought he was out of gas, but he rips and clones himself a concentrate, forks a concentrate rather, with Chandra's ability, and look at this. Draw 6 with a reliquary tower in play. Boy. So anyway, have some cards there. At any rate, when you can't stop their hand, then you've got to stop their land. So the plan here with that muddle was play the Chalice for 2, play a land from the graveyard, transmute muddle, and go get Winter Orb. So there we go. But looky there, Demonic Tutor. So great. And that lets me hold on to a muddle and save a mana. My opponent dings me with Chandra again and gets down with Coalition Relic, unfortunately. So now I really want to kill that. I've got to try to maintain the game plan here. Oh, excuse me, for controlling his mana. So I figured I might want to play that Power Stone at some point. So I draw it, and I see a Jace, which isn't actually going to be helpful, strangely enough. Shuffle it away into a Fire and Ice. That's not particularly helpful. With maybe if I had an Isochron, it'd be more useful. So I can use it to keep one of his lands on lock under the orb. I shuffle it away and get a Vess. Again, still not helpful. So I transmute the model. And there's a Grudge with a counterspell on top. Those are always helpful. And he dings me again. So luckily I find myself a Soul Ring. All these different shuffles to look, and look for everything you want, right? And again, I don't need swords, so... Now notice I only have a blue, 2 colorless, and a colorless floating later when he makes a particular play. So there's a hinder. And he knows I have the Spell Crumple because it was on top when I drew it. But anyway, I throw down Lantern, and in response, he kills Winter Orb. So the correct time for him to do it would have been earlier. There's a good possibility, and I debated it here, but I figured, based on what I knew that he knew, that he didn't have removal. If I hadn't have shown him the Spell Crumple earlier, I definitely would not have cast the Lantern this turn, and then he would have had that Putrefy and ran it right into that hinder. But anyway, it all works out for him. So he gets to untap, and he plays Chandra's Fork ability, and Maelstrom pulses my Future Sight, targeting it twice wisely, and not Sight and Crucible. Had he not targeted it twice, I would have hindered whichever one targeted it. But unfortunately for me, he played correctly, so I don't bother casting the hinder and praying for Force of Will on top, especially with him showing 5 mana and me having a counterspell in hand, so I just let it go. At least I know that I'll get a counter to replace the one that I'm about to use. I knew that after double concentrate, him having 5 mana meant I was going to be countering something. Alright, so we've ground down most of the cards in his hand. He's down to 4. And at any rate, the whole game plan here was set up the big will, right? So what I'm going to do now is open up the graveyard and move it up here so you can track and decide if you would make similar plays as what I made. And I decided not to use a sack land, which will keep it in the graveyard for later recursion with Crucible just yet, because I know that I want to play Future Sight and I want to think about what my options are before I commit. I've got extra sack on, so if I lose one this turn, it's okay. So I blow the will. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the exiled pile down below the graveyard, and it'll fill up with cards. Alright, so there's the graveyard on top, exiled pile on bottom. So I cast Grim first of all. Another strong reason for playing the Transmute artifact is the fact that you do frequently kill Grims, Crypts, and Vaults, and it powers Will later. In longer games, you can do exactly what I'm doing here. Recast the Grim for value, picking up extra mana. And look at that, Vault hiding on top. Perfect target for Transmute. And so I do. A note, I go get a Lotus and pay a little bit more. I am planning to get down with the Winter Orb here. We'll pay attention to the fact that this is the top of my library. So I decide to go ahead and play the Sackland. Now the goal here is to continuously shuffle away anything that blocks Future Sight and play as many things as possible from both the hand and graveyard. But since Future Sight will stick around and Will is only around for this turn, Will abuse is the most important goal. So anyway, Spell Crumple is revealed, and I do want that. It's kind of nice that Spell Crumple put itself back in the deck and I shuffled. So what I do is I go ahead and Brainstorm to get it. And I draw those 3 cards and get rid of a Vandal Blast with no targets and a Worn Power Stone. And then again, to carry on with the abuse of Future Sight, I shuffle. And look at that. Tezzeret. Hello, Tezzeret. So we're just going to move the top of the library up here. So there's a Tezzeret, and Tez obviously is going to pump and produce more mana than he costs. I run out Enlightened Tutor for a Mox, so basically a 0 cost Enlightened Tutor. And look at that, Metamorph hiding on top, so they're able to convert 3 colors into Gilded Lotus, which will produce 3 blue, and then that's able to convert that excess white I had back into colorless. And the top of my library is again Vandal Blast. I just keep shuffling this doggone thing away. It's crazy because Vandal Blast is such a bomber, and you can imagine if you played it against me. But, you know, sometimes it's dead too. It's a necessary evil though. So I Merchant Scroll and go get Force Solo with a Forbid on top. Slap down the Winter Orb and figure it's perfectly fine to get rid of a Forbid. I need to cast a Demonic Tutor while I can. And head off to Vindicate land so that we can clear out Chandra. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get Vindicate. There it is. Go get Vindicate. And then he almost certainly is going to shoot Tez. And barring Crows and Grip, I'm going to Force Will his next play. Then on my turn, I'm going to have absolutely absurd amounts of mana where I'm going to be able to Vindicate his Chandra, +1 Tez for even more mana, do horrible things with Future Sight potentially, and Crucible to shuffle if I need to. And I'm going to say go, and on his turn, whatever he does will get countered, and on my turn I will attack him for 45 or 50 or whatever with Tezzeret's ultimate, and the game's gonna end. That was the plan, but what actually happens is yeah, he sees the handwriting on the wall and he quits. And as always, here's the deck list. As far as this goes, a quick assessment. I've made some changes. Ray of Revelation was very frustrating, and I wanted it to be Disenchant for a really long time. So I finally decided to go ahead and make the swap, at which point Quiet Speculation was looking a little bit weaker. And in my experience with Spec, even though it is this incredible bomb to go get Ray, Grudge, and Deep Analysis, or Mystical Teachings, Grudge, and Deep, Drawing Deep Analysis and casting it for 4 mana as a sorcery was generally not good. So with Ray out and Spec therefore weakened, I went ahead and just pulled Spec and Deep out as well, and replaced them with the 2 additional counterspells, Hinder and Spell Crumple, something that Brian Weissman had recommended, and something that I agree with. He didn't specifically say to pull those cards, but I think logically that they were the best choice, and the higher counter density just makes this deck even more threatening, along with the fact that this enchant gives me yet another very simple, straightforward way to deal with some of the worst threats in the format, which generally revolve around beating artifacts. So, hope you enjoy the deck list. I hope you enjoyed the games, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.